Hey guys, Tuna here for the third and final part of my Momir Vig deck tech. So today we're going to be going over the creatures and let's wrap things up. So first we have Birds of Paradise, and Birds of Paradise is good since it's a 1-drop that allows us to fix our mana, and it's a flyer, so I guess occasionally it can just block a big flyer and just save some damage, so it's a very useful card. Next we have Coiling Oracle, which is one of my personal favorite cards in this deck since it's both blue and green, and it's a creature, so it allows us to trigger both of Momir's abilities, and it allows us to draw a card or like ramp us. So either way, you're not going to be sad when you play this guy. He's going to do either one of two things that are very useful for you. Next we have Sakura Tribe Elder, and Sakura Tribe Elder is very useful since it allows us to ramp again, and it's a creature, so it's good with Momir. Um, and it's, I would say, another EDH staple. It's just very good all around. Next we have Plax Manta, and Plax Manta is useful since it basically gives a creature you control hexproof until end of turn when you play him, so it's good for protecting Momir, and since it's a creature you could tutor for him with Momir, so it just fits very well with the theme. Next we have Cloud of Fairies, which is very useful since she allows us to untap our lands when we come into play, and I have a few Karus and other lands that produce more than one mana. So with Cloud of Fairies and things like Cloudstone Curio, I can produce infinite mana by bouncing Cloud of Fairies and another 2-drop creature over and over again. And also with another creature in the deck, Tidesbone Tyrant, I could bounce all of my opponent's permanents by playing this and another 2-drop over and over again, since I have like mana open every time I play it. And next we have Elvish Visionary, which isn't that good by itself, but with Momir is very good since with Momir's abilities, since it's a green creature, when this comes into play, you could search your library for a creature and put it on the top of your library, and then you could stack the triggers and you draw the card afterwards, so it's almost as if you played a blue and green creature, so it's very cool. And last we have Fauna Shaman, which is a very useful creature since it gives us a survival of the fittest type effect, where we could discard a creature, then tutor for a creature, which is good since this is a toolbox deck, and sometimes we just need a certain type of ability, which is on one of our creatures that we can just search for. And I'll give examples of that later. Next we have Edric Spymaster of Trest, which is very good in our deck since it allows all of our creatures to, whenever they deal damage to a player, to draw a card, which is good. Drawing cards is always fun. And we have lots of small little creatures in this deck, so it's useful. Next we have Farhaven Elf, which is very good since it ramps us when it comes into play. This is a green creature, which is also useful. Basically, we want as many creatures with end of the battlefield abilities in this deck to replace spells, since creatures work better with Momir, so we want to help the deck sort of maintain its synergy. Next we have Trinket Mage, which in this deck mostly just searches for Soul Ring and I guess occasionally the artifact lands, since they cost 1 or less to like fix your mana if you're stuck on blue, or I mean, I guess you'd be stuck on green actually. So there's that. Next we have Eternal Witness, which is another staple of EDH. Comes into play, return a card from your graveyard to your hand. It's very useful, pretty much always good, unless you have no cards in your graveyard, I guess, but it's just a good creature to have, and it is, again, a creature, or another battlefield trigger, which is very good with Momir. Next we have Fierce Empath, which is, I would say, sort of another staple, allows us to tutor for a creature with 6 or greater mana cost, and another battlefield trigger is very good with Momir. Next we have Shardless Agent, which is a blue and green creature, which triggers both of Momir's abilities, which is, again, very good. And it's just a bunch of value, just value on a stick, this guy. With Cascade, you're almost always going to hit a useful 2-drop creature. We have a bunch of 2-drop creatures in this deck, so he's almost always going to 2-for-1. I guess not 2-for-1, but you're going to get multiple cards off of this guy. Next we have Loaming Shaman, who's very useful, I think. He allows us to shuffle target player's libraries, so sometimes, like, after we just got wiped or board wiped or something, you could shuffle your own creatures into your library so you could tutor something the next turn. Or if one of your opponents is playing a graveyard theme, you could use this guy to sort of mess with your opponent's graveyard theme. Next we have Trigon Predator, which allows us to destroy our opponent's artifacts and enchantments, which is very useful. And we have Wood Elves, which allows us to tutor for a forest. And since the land part of my deck tech, I've gotten a breeding pool, so I can search for a breeding pool, which again fixes my mana. So this guy's very useful. Next we have Wistful Selkie, which is a blue and green creature that allows us to trigger both of Momir's abilities. And it draws us a card, which is always good. So this guy is just a solid guy all around. Next we have Elvish Harbinger. It's an elf that allows us to tutor for an elf. And we have a few elves in this deck. Coiling Oracle, Oracle of Moldiah. So allows us to tutor for an elf, which is always useful. And it fixes our mana by tapping to add a color. 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So it's just a solid creature. Next we have Mystic Snake, which sort of goes with the toolbox theme of the deck, since if we're ever in need of a counterspell, we can just tutor for one with Mystic Snake with Momir's abilities. And it's also a blue and green creature itself, so we could tutor for a creature once we play this and counter something. So this guy is very good. And next we have Solemn Simulacrum, which is a value guy again, is EDH staples, very good. He doesn't fit in too well with Momir since he's not in blue or green, so we can't use Momir's abilities off of him, but still, he's very good. Next we have Oracle of Moldiah, and this guy's one of my favorites in the deck. It allows us to ramp a lot, which is very useful in this deck since we want to be playing as many creatures as possible with Momir out and just keep tutoring and tutoring and tutoring. And just get card advantage. So this guy is very good for ramping. Probably any green EDH deck I would suggest putting it in. And then next we have Phyrexian Metamorph, another personal favorite of mine. You could copy an artifact or a creature. Most of the time you're going to copy a creature, but sometimes you're going to want to copy Soul Ring, like early game. If you like short on mana, you can copy Soul Ring and just produce a ton of mana. So this guy is very useful, very versatile. Next we have Acidic Slime, which is another enter the battlefield sort of toolbox card. For having trouble with an artifact or enchantment our opponent has, this guy destroys it, and he has Death Touch, so he's almost always going to 2-for-1 your opponent. Now we have Muldrifter, and Muldrifter is useful since it's very versatile. It could be a 3 mana draw 2 cards, or it could be a 5 mana 2/2 that draws you 2 cards. So either way, this guy is good. Yeah, solid creature. Next we have Duplicate. Duplicate is also one of my favorite cards. I love the art on this too, the new art. It allows us to exile one of our opponent's creatures, and this guy gets, his power and toughness becomes the exiled creature's power and toughness. Again, he's an artifact creature, so he doesn't trigger off a Momir, but he's good enough that that isn't really that much of a problem in this deck. Yeah, I like this guy a lot. Next we have Consecrated Sphinx, which another very, very powerful card in EDH. Allows us to draw 2 cards every time one of our opponents draws a card, which in 4 players is obscene since you just draw like 8 cards a turn. And if this guy stays out at least for more than 1 turn in like 4-player EDH, you've pretty much like have gained so much of an advantage that you're very likely to win the game. Next we have Deadwood Treefolk. This guy is very good since it's another way for get creatures back from our graveyard to our hand. And he has Vanishing, which means more than likely you're going to get that ability twice, since he's going to come into play, and then he's going to leave play when you get the ability again. So it's very useful. So we have Deadeye Navigator, which is one of my favorite EDH cards. It allows you to take advantage of enter the battlefield triggers by soul bonding it with something, and then you could pay 2 to blink the thing you with enter the battlefield triggers over and over again, sort of take advantage of that. Next we have Brutalizer Exarch, and this guy is another versatile guy to tutor for. You could tuck generals with it, or I guess you don't tuck generals. You could tutor for it, and then you could just do lots of non-land permanent at the bottom of your library. So you could tuck like nasty enchantments your opponents have. Just a versatile card. Pretty much always one of the modes it has are always going to be useful for you. So that's always good to have. Next we have Kamal, Fist of Krosa, which is one of the finishers in this deck. So basically, after we play a bunch of our creatures and hopefully haven't been board wiped, you can tutor for this guy, and then the next turn you use his ability once or twice, or however, based on how much mana you have, and it's pretty much game over. Just a ton of damage out of nowhere. It's very useful. So we have Sylvan Primordial, which is probably the best EDH card out of Gatecrash. Very, very useful. Sort of, I took Trastodon out. I previously had Trastodon in this deck, and I replaced him with this guy since I personally think he's just better than Trastodon. Destroys online permanents, it ramps you, does everything you want, it blocks flyers, just a solid guy. I give this guy my seal of approval. Next we have Chancellor of the Spires, another personal pick of mine. The first ability isn't that relevant in this deck, but casting spells out of your opponent's graveyard is almost always going to be useful, especially if you're playing with more than one person, which in EDH is more than likely going to happen. And he's just a big body to have, just a solid creature. Next we have Avenger of Zendikar, which is another EDH, I wouldn't say staple, but it's a popular EDH card. When it comes into play, it puts a bunch of tokens into play for each land, and with all the ramp in this deck that I have, you could just easily get the landfall triggers, and you just have a huge army. And then with, again, like Kamal, you just pretty much insta-win the next turn. Then we have Vorinclex, which is another finisher. It doubles our mana, and then it sort of locks down our opponent's mana. And it's a 7/6 trample, which isn't anything to sneeze at, so a solid guy. And then we have Woodfall Primus, another EDH staple, I would say. It's Persist, destroys non-creature permanents, it's got Trample, it's a huge body, comes back into play once it dies, again with Persist. It's a creature with an enter the battlefield trigger, so it's good with Momir, so all the above check out, so this guy's good. Then lastly, we have Tidesbone Tyrant, and it's probably the best card in the deck, I would say. Again, with Cloud of Fairies and Cloudstone Curio and another like a 2-drop creature, you could bounce your all of your opponent's permanents by playing things over and over again. Even if you don't have the combo, just bouncing a permanent every time you play something is very useful. So that was all the creatures. So that was the third and final part of my Momir Vig tech deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If you'd like to see other tech decks in the future, please leave me a comment. And as always, have a nice day.